Hello and welcome to Bootham School's Politics Department. I'm here to tell you a little bit about what studying politics at A-level is all about here. We're a relatively new department, but we're one that is growing all the time. We find that politics students at Bootham are especially politically engaged and interested, which is a real strength of our department. So politics A-level at Bootham is divided into three key parts. First of all, in the College 1 year, you learn two separate courses, one on UK politics and the other on UK government. And then in College 2, you have a separate paper which is on comparative theories of global politics, so looking at global institutions and how they function in running the world. So the UK politics paper is divided into two, between the UK politics section and the core political ideas section. So the UK politics section starts off by looking at democracy. So how has democracy evolved in this country and how democratic is our system? So we'll be doing lots of debates on things to do with should prisoners be given the vote, should 16-year-olds be given the vote, and then moving on to that, we'll be looking at how parties and political parties have developed and changed over time. So what does it mean actually to be a Conservative? What are you supposed to believe if you're a Liberal Democrat? How have those parties evolved? And actually, what have their experiences of power been like to how that's changed their ideologies? We also look as well at party political funding and that kind of thing. So there's lots of good nitty-gritty debate in there. We also will be looking at elections, electoral systems. So does first past the post even really work? Is it a good system? Well, what are the alternatives to that? And also the increasing use of referendums as well in our system. And what does that tell us? What lots of our students really enjoy doing as part of this course is looking at voting behaviour and the media. We look at that through three key case studies of general elections, and we analyse the data together and we say, well, actually, what has that told us about voting behaviour? How has voting behaviour changed? What trends can we see emerging? And what has the impact of the media been? As I'm sure any of us who spend a lot of time looking at Donald Trump's Twitter feed will understand that the increasing role of the media in our democracy is fascinating and important to understand. The final part of this politics paper is looking at core political ideologies. So this is much more looking at politics as we would study it at university. So looking at the original thinkers and those with the original ideas. So you'll be reading and understanding the works of people like J.S. Mill, Thomas Hobbes, Marx and Engels, as you look and debate liberalism, conservatism and socialism. You'll be understanding the key tensions between those different viewpoints and the different people who have argued and taken those ideas forward from their original conception through to the modern day. At the same time, you'll be studying a UK government course. Now, that government course is much more about the theory that underpins our political system, so that you can better understand the politics paper. So we'll be looking at the Constitution. Very strange that we've had a lot of constitutional reforms since 1997 for a country that doesn't have a constitution. So we'll be looking at the extent to which we understand our country through constitutional norms. We also look at the role of Parliament, the different houses within Parliament, the role that government plays within that, and how democratic or indeed representative we find our Parliament to be. We also look at three case studies of different prime ministers and evaluate their relationships with their executive and their government. And given the Brexit debacle that we find ourselves in, that key relationship between prime minister and their executive gets more and more thorny as time goes on. So that's a fantastic debate-driven section. And then finally, we also consider relationships between different institutions within our government. So relationships with the judiciary, for example, and relationships with the EU in addition to that. The non-core ideology that we look at on this paper is that of ecologism. So ecologism is eco-politics, environmental politics or green politics. So we'll be looking at the views of eco-feminists and eco-anarchists, deep green and shallow green thinkers, to see how views and ideas on politics have impacted on the economy, how they impact on society, as well as how they impact on actual real world situations. That's all College 1. So by the time you finish College 1, you'll be in a strong position to do 2 of the 3 papers at A-level. In College 2, we study a much broader paper on comparative politics, looking at global politics. So that comparative politics paper starts off by looking at the role of the state. We can't understand if globalization has taken place if we don't understand what the role of the state is. So have we moved beyond the sovereign state? And now do we understand globalized politics to be more important, or do we see a rise in nationalism taking place at the moment, which maybe undermines this process of globalization? We look at global governance, so how do international bodies govern? So politically, things like the UN, for example, or economically, so those Bretton Woods institutions like the IMF or the WTO. And we also look at to what extent does a globalised world deal with the problems that it has in front of it. So we look at human rights. So to what extent are we dealing with human rights effectively globally? To what extent are we looking after the environment? And the COVID-19 pandemic is a fantastic case study in understanding actually, do our global institutions do anything to help in situations of global emergency? We understand this idea as well about exercising and developing power within the system. So, who has the power? Why do some states have more power than other states? Do these international bodies have more power than individual states? And that leads very nicely into us looking at this idea of regionalism with a case study with the EU. Lots of sovereign states are choosing to throw in their lot and sort of reject a bit of their own sovereign power in order to join a broader regional body in the hope that they will gain more power themselves through a bigger group. So to what extent are regional groups more powerful than individual states or indeed global institutions? And underpinning all of that is a much more complex understanding of ideology. So you'll be asked and you'll need to bring with you your understanding of liberalism, conservatism, socialism and ecologism to your understanding of this, and we'll be broadening that out with looking at neoliberalism, realism, neorealism, to understand and develop the theories that are underneath these global trends. So the sorts of questions that you might expect to see or that you might be asked, you can see. So the first 2 are sort of a little bit more just asking you to understand about the different contents within that, whereas you can see that they get increasingly more complex. So the political ideas question, so to what extent do socialists have conflicting views over how the economy should operate, through to that comparative question of evaluating the extent to which globalization has made the world unipolar rather than multipolar. So asking you to tie together your knowledge and your understanding of ideology to create a broader and slightly more complex essay. But as I say, you get lots of support with that essay writing. So what skills will you learn as a politician? What things can you look forward to developing? Well, first of all, most basically, you will learn how the UK and global systems work. You will understand how the systems in which you live affect you and how you can affect change within that. You'll also understand ideology and the world in which people are, making decisions for you. The thought processes that are going behind them making those decisions on your behalf. You'll also learn and develop skills of critical analysis. So you'll be doing some source analysis. So there are source analysis questions for you to attempt as part of A-level politics. So you'll be learning not to take things at face value, which I think in this age of global news has never been more important, that you shouldn't take things at face value. And in addition, you'll learn how to write and debate effectively. Almost all of our lessons are debate centred. So you'll be expected to come to lessons ready to defend a view, to debate a view, and as well, you'll learn how to take on board the views of others also. So you'll be a much more effective writer and a much more convincing writer by the end. But I think more important than any of those things that you learn, the knowledge and the skills, is that you will hopefully be impassioned to go and change the world. You will understand exactly how the world works and therefore exactly how to change the world if you think something needs changing. So anybody who wants to do A-level politics is so welcome to do it. We ask that you pass your GCSE English to a good standard, but other than that, anyone is welcome. I'm afraid I really can't get around the fact that it is an essay-based subject. Very sorry, wish I could say it wasn't the case, but you will be doing writing. So if the thought of writing lots of essays sort of makes you think, oh no, then perhaps this isn't for you. The only thing I would say is that there are different types of essay within that. So there are some that are shorter, some that are longer. So there is a range of essay questions. Much more important though is your willingness to stay up to date with the news. I would put a short little caveat in with this in saying that this is not a history course. So you're not going to be learning about the history of UK politics. There's a very good history course which you might want to do if you're interested in the history of politics, which you could do. But in this, actually, the exam board really only credits examples if they are as up-to-date as possible. So you must be willing to stay up-to-date with the news and give recent up-to-date examples with this work. So we expect all of our students to have a couple of news apps on their phones. We expect them to follow several accounts on social media that gives them up-to-date, impartial views on the news. So you must be willing to stay up-to-date, and you must also be willing to debate those ideas when you come into the lesson. Every lesson usually involves some discussion about what's happening in the world. So that willingness to stay up-to-date is really important. And as well, a willingness to talk about those ideas when you come. But that's a very brief introduction. If you have any questions, please don't be afraid to email and ask. I'm kitty.wilson@boothamschool.com, and I hopefully look forward to seeing some of you in September.